Welcome to Move Your Mind. My name's Nick Bracks, and this is a podcast where we have real conversations with real people and give real advice. One of the things I love about this podcast is being able to talk to people from all walks of life and hear about their journey and their experience with mental health and how they overcame issues. Jonathon Moran is Australia's authority on all things entertainment, from film to TV, music, and everything in between. He has more than 20 years of experience in journalism and also hosts the top-rating National Confidential show on Nova Radio and the J.Mo Confidential podcast. Thank you for supporting Move Your Mind, and if you'd like to learn more, you can go to moveyourmind.me, or you can check out the Move Your Mind book at nickbracks.com/book. This episode was recorded some time ago while people were still in isolation during COVID, hence the references in the interview. Thank you so much, mate, for coming and having this chat. We've done a bit of back and forth, and I've known you for, I don't know how long now, and we haven't, but this is why I like the podcast. I get to sit down and spend, half an hour talking to people that I don't get the time to talk to a lot of the time. So thanks for doing it, mate. Yeah, it's my pleasure. I love watching what you've been doing, and obviously being a journalist covering you on Dancing with the Stars or whatever the hell you did. I'm sure you did that show, and it's nice to dig a little bit deeper. And to be honest with you, I think you're probably trying not to interview you here because it's a natural habit, but you would be used to, like me, being underestimated in life. People be like, he's the pretty dude, model, whatever, and there's so much more depth, which is really nice to see. I haven't read your book, looking forward to it, but I love the stuff you're doing in the mental health and space, and just having conversations, because that's the way we need to live life. Totally, mate. I think it's just, that's the thing. That's the whole point of the podcast. And what I'm trying to do with this is just having, nothing unique, just having open conversations and trying to let people learn from other people. And, we're all human. We all have ups and downs, and it's normal. It's actually, it would be abnormal not to have that. So it's kind of crazy that a lot of people don't, feel comfortable talking about it.
Yeah, and I think there's a really nice thing. I mean, I find it weird that anyone would be remotely interested. If you're listening to this and you're turning off now, that's fine. But I find it weird that people would give a shit what I have to say. But, opinions are like assholes. I say this every day, that we've all got them. And, sometimes we can connect with someone's opinion. Sometimes we can't. We can disagree. But, opinions, life is a beautiful thing. So share your thoughts. You can agree and disagree with different things in life. But, here we are.
Totally. It's fine. It's fine to disagree. And I think that's, a problem in the world at the moment. There's a lot of polarization where, we've got to find somewhere in the middle, and, you can have different opinions, but it doesn't mean you have to, berate each other because of it. So it's sort of a whole nother conversation anyway. But before we get into it, are you able to give, just for our listeners, like a little bit of a background on yourself and sort of how you came to, where you are now?
Okay, so I'm Jonathon Moran, or Jonathon Moran. My mother would be rolling in her grave. It's Moran, not Moran, not Moron. It's Moran. My nickname's J.Mo, like J.Lo. I'm a bit of a diva, and I don't mind that reputation. I've been a journalist for 20-something years. I'm 43 in human years. I'm 301 in gay years, because it's like dogs or animals. There's 7 gay years to 1 human year. I am an entertainment journalist. Some people would call me a gossip writer. I hate that term. People can ask me about it, but I just don't like it, because I studied journalism in Canberra. I grew up in Canberra my mother was a single parent with a bureaucrat, and, working in Parliament House. So I have a very keen interest in politics. So I'm excited that you're the son of a politician, but it doesn't even mention that on your Wikipedia, my friend.
Good.
I like being underestimated in that sense, because people just think I'm some entertainment dude, and that's all that I am.
I like that. Yeah, exactly. And people, I think people like gravitate to the lowest common denominator normally, and that's, I guess, that's what you learn. And similar to me being in that, like you were saying before, being in that entertainment world, it's like, whatever the most simple thing is what people will gravitate towards, and then they'll decide, okay, this is how we define this person based on this one thing that we've heard, because that's, we need to categorize things, or it makes it easier to understand when that's not life. It's complicated, and everyone's complicated, and we're not any one thing. We can be multiple things.
Mate, I'm a fucking mess, a red hot mess, not just complicated.
Yeah, well, who's not though? And I mean, being able to actually say and admit that probably makes you less of a mess than a lot of people that are,
Maybe.
pushing it down. And who knows? But anyway,
Hmm.
I appreciate the honesty, mate. So I guess like to start off with, how have you found lockdown and that whole period? I guess it's like you were saying, before we started, it's in month number 3 of lockdown, or
Yeah, this is the end of week 12 of lockdown, and we've got at least
wow.
another 5 weeks to go before Freedom Day. And even when Freedom Day comes on October 18, I don't know how free it's going to be. I'm okay with it. I think for the most part, there's been a lot of stuff ups on the federal government level in Australia from the rollout of the vaccine, but you know, we got whipped into shape pretty quickly and sorted our shit out, and life's back on track. We're in lockdown, just doing our thing. I'm okay. I'm up and down. It's a Corona coaster. I'm living my life, just doing the best I can, and it's tough. I'm living with my boyfriend and my housemate who's making her breakfast out in the kitchen. We're all living on top of each other, and yeah, it's interesting times. But then I kind of think to myself, well, maybe I should try and appreciate it, because this is a moment in history. My mum never experienced anything like this in her 56 years that she was alive. Um, I don't know if my grandfather, when was the Spanish flu, whatever. So it's just, you just got to sort of smell the roses and find the beauty in what we've got, the simplicity of it.
Yeah, remind ourselves that things will change and get better, and it will pass, but it sort of can feel like it's going forever when you're in it. But it's a hard thing to do. It's still a tough thing to do.
And I was, so before COVID, pre-COVID, BC, um, my world, my life, my worldview was always so fast. I was on and off a plane. I would have gone overseas at least once every 6 weeks on average. Everything was fast, and there's been a beauty in being still. Last night at the dinner table, my boyfriend said, "Oh, I'd love to go to, I can't, Russia. Want to go to Moscow." And I said, "I just want to get out of Zetland first. Like, that's our suburb in Sydney."
Right.
So
Yeah.
I don't know, but the thought of, it's just a weird world, isn't it?
No, well, and that's one of the questions I was going to ask you, because I know with your work it involves that and traveling around, and it's sort of fast paced, and you're on planes and all that sort of thing. Like, how do you think, or what do you feel like the adjustment will be when things do sort of go back to normal? Do you think you'll find like a bit of a middle ground, or have you enjoyed being able to reel
Um,
things back a little bit, or are you excited to get back into that fast paced life again?
I'm a bit anxious about it, to be honest. When lockdown happened last year, when it all happened, it was the anxiety of, is the world going to end? And then when this lockdown happened and we're 3 months in, it's like, well, okay, this is a bit weird. I thought we were done with this, but okay, I'm going to go with it. I know how to do it. I'm going to try and make the most of it. And there's been this Corona coaster of craziness and whatever. And now that we're like, okay, we're nearly at 70% vaccinated, and then nearly at 80% after that. And the thought of going back to normal, it almost terrifies me, if I'm brutally honest with you,
Mm,
because what does
mm.
normal mean? And do I want to go back to that situation where I'm in the office 12 hours a day? Working from home has its pros and it has its cons, but I don't know, getting back on that roller coaster kind of scares me.
It's so interesting, isn't it? It's sort of like, until we sometimes, and that's one of the blessings of COVID. It's given people that forced sort of time to be able to stop and look at things. And a lot of the time, what we think we want isn't necessarily what's best for us, or
Yeah.
but we don't have time to evaluate it. And then it's how do you find that middle ground? And I struggle with that a lot. How do you find a healthy medium? Because I always just want to take whatever it is to the extreme, either on either end. So it's like
I don't want to
a
miss out on
challenge.
anything. I have
Yeah.
FOMO in every sense of the word and every sense of life. So when life starts going faster again, I'm I won't want to miss anything. So I'll accept every opportunity. And there's something great in that. But it's also like, hang on, how do I look after my health? How do I look after my mental health? So yeah, in that sense, it kind of scares me, but in other ways it excites me. I'd love to travel, but are we ever going to get back to that, carefree travel that we used to have? I don't know. And maybe we shouldn't. Maybe I genuinely believe that we took the piss and that we didn't appreciate what we had. Like, I would go to Bali for a weekend. Like, that's just stupid. That's a 7-hour flight to Bali for 2 nights. Like, that's just stupid. Like, why would you do that and pay $1,000 for just that weekend? I would go to, the US for 2 days and then come back for an interview for work. I went to London for 3 days 2 years ago before COVID, and that was because I was doing an interview with Cher or someone like that. And like, that's just stupid. And I'm not sort of some crazy environmentalist. I certainly would lean more on the left side of politics than the right, and so therefore more towards Labor and Green and so on. But if I just think about what that's doing to the environment and what that's doing to the world, I think humans are selfish. We're selfish fucks. Am I allowed to swear?
You can swear, you can say whatever you want. No, but I think where we don't mean to be selfish, but we are by nature of, what I think it's just that sort of thing that's, in it's capitalism, and it's been taught to us. I mean, you see it so much living over in America, and it's this thing that's been ingrained in us, and it's never been challenged. Hopefully, now this is going to be that catalyst for changing, because when like you're saying, when you think about it, it's like, well, why was it necessary to fly across the world for one interview when you can just do it over Zoom or something like that? So I think a lot of things will change in that way, but it makes you question a lot of things, doesn't it?
It was only really, I'm 10 years older than you, so it was only really until I was 15, even a few years older, so like the end of my teens, traveling overseas was not a normal thing. People with money did it, but certainly for me, when I was a kid, my mum was a single parent, and we went to Bali when I was 7 because it was the only place my mum could afford, and she really wanted my twin sister and I, to experience another culture. And then when I was 13, we went to Sri Lanka, and there was a war there. The Tamil Tigers, and the whole situation was blown up. I remember seeing tanks and rifles and stuff like that, but we went there because that was where we could afford. And then we didn't go overseas again for many years. So, like, it wasn't, and I know even to this day, there's a lot of Australians that have never been overseas. There's certainly a lot of Americans that have never, they wouldn't even know where Australia is. So, I don't know, it was that sort of 20-year period where the world went crazy.
Yep. And I think a lot of it, yeah, totally. And I think a lot of things, we become a product of whatever environment we're in, and I think you can sort of lose perspective on certain things, especially being in the entertainment world, and you're around a lot of people that are successful, and you're having all these crazy experiences, and you can forget that that's not day-to-day reality, and that's not how a lot of people live, and then that becomes the normal for you. So it's sort of, when you can pull back, you realize, wow, that's fun, and I'm glad I had that experience, but there's also, this isn't what life's about. And there's a lot of other, things that are important in life.
And I do think that there is an amazing beauty, and the best lesson in life is travel and learning from other cultures. And I did a student exchange to Germany when I was 17. It was one of the best experiences of my life. The friends that I have in Hanover in Germany are some of the closest friends in my life. I'm godfather to their children, and even though I don't believe in God. And I think that is a hugely important thing. I just think we took the excesses for granted and took the piss out of it.
Yeah, definitely, man. Definitely.
Why does everyone have to get married overseas? Why can't they get married in the beauty of, whatever? Let's just strip it back a little bit, make it a special occasion. But maybe I'm just pontificating. And you could say tomorrow I could have a completely different view.
Which is fine. We'll have to do a follow-up interview, and I'll ask you what your views are on a few of these things. So with the work, with your industry and what you've, being in the entertainment world and as a journalist and the work you've been doing, what are the things that you've found most fulfilling about being in that industry and taken the most, joy out of? What have you
Well,
taken out of that?
I pride myself in, I'm a journalist first and an entertainment journalist second.
Yep.
So I pride myself in journalism. Have I made mistakes? Sure. But, I studied for 3 years at Canberra University. I did cross-institutional studies. I did some subjects at ANU, Australian National University in Canberra. I did a year cadetship at Australian Associated Press. So I consider myself to be a journalist. I do
Totally.
shorthand. I learned all those old school journalism things. And so I look at myself as a journalist, and that's why I don't like the word gossip writer, because it's not, that just simplifies it down to the lowest common denominator.
Yep.
So I am a journalist, and that's the prism through which I see a story, even if it is as simple as some sort of gossipy showbiz something. I get up in the morning and I'm doing my job as a journalist. I don't know if that even makes sense, but that's how I
It
see it.
does.
That's how
Yeah.
I see it, and I take it very seriously. And I try and treat it with respect. I try and treat it with, just doing. Take you for example. Let's say we did a picture story for Dancing with the Stars. I try and treat that with the same respect that I would treat if I was doing a press conference with the Prime Minister or the Premier, or dealing with a homicide situation or the Bali bombings or something like that. And I know they're completely different, but I try being the optimum word, to treat it the same.
Yeah, totally. Which is it's so important, I think, and especially in this day and age with so much information out there. I think it's we need credible people like yourself, because
Well,
how do you decipher in this day and age? Like we're presented with so much information now. I mean, that's
everyone's
overwhelming.
a citizen journalist. Everyone has
Yeah.
a camera. Everyone's on social media. They all think, again, everyone's got an opinion. They're like assholes. We've all got them. But it is, the difference between me as a journalist working for the Daily Telegraph, or doing a radio show on Nova, or podcasting, or doing whatever, is that I have that experience that I mentioned before, and I know what the real story is. So the Daily Mail yesterday ran a story saying, rumoured Michael Clarke is doing SAS Australia reality show. Well, they didn't know anything. They probably heard from someone that, like one tiny nugget, but do they make all the phone calls? Do they get the actual story? So in today's paper, we have the real story, because I pick up the phone, I ring Michael, I ring his manager, I do all the journalism things you're supposed to do. And we've got the real story. So Michael Clarke did sign a contract to do SAS Australia. A week ago, or earlier this week, he pulled out because he has a back injury. So no, he's not doing it. But there's lazy journalism, there's good journalism. I'm not pontificating and saying I'm either. I'm just saying that I pride myself in trying to be a proper journalist.
Which is great, and I
there's
think
a
it's
lot
a
of
good
lazy
message.
shit journalists out there, and people out there just pretending to be journalists, or saying, wanting to be part of that. And it's probably worse in the celebrity world, because the people always want to be a little bit of a taste of that rich and famous and celebrity stuff.
Totally.
But in all honesty, it's all bullshit.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's a problem, in so many industries now, in the world we live in. Everyone wants a quick fix, or to be famous, or people on social media, or doing because there's all these avenues. But I think the reality is, even if you can sort of get some quick success and you take shortcuts, it's not going to last. If you do things properly and with integrity, and like you're saying, at just trying to put your best foot forward all the time, you're going to have longer term success, and you're going to build something. Well, I think so.
Yeah, and I hope you're right. But then I find it quite depressing when I see the TikTokers and the Instagrammers and the Facebookers that all, they don't have any skill that goes behind what they say they do, and they're earning millions of dollars. I'm just
It's
going to try and
incredibly
shut this door
depressing.
because but the
Go
internet
for it, yeah.
cuts out. The internet sometimes cuts out if that door's closed. So if it cuts out, I'll have to open it.
Oh, no problem, mate. But
anyway,
we'll cut these bits out.
I find that whole sort of social media, Insta fame world pretty difficult because it sort of discounts all the other experience that other people have. And then you're like, well, maybe I should have done it that way, or maybe I shouldn't have. And, in general, I'm against influencers for the points of influencing sake. But I also understand it has a legitimate part of the business of entertainment and so on. But I do think people need to earn their stripes. They need to prove themselves. If you just went out and I know you don't like, I'm assuming you don't like this line, but if you just went out and said, I'm Nick Bracks, the son of the former Premier of Victoria, and I want to do Dancing with the Stars, I want to be a model, I want to be an influencer, from my observation, you fought very hard from being referred to as the son of. And I respect that, because while I respect your dad, I think he's an amazing man and was a great Premier of Victoria, a really great Premier, actually. But I respect that you want to make your own name, and that can be really difficult. But there's a lot of people in the entertainment world that just take the free ride and expect to be respected. There's a lot of people. I don't care.
Yeah, and
got 1 million followers on Instagram because you've got a six pack or big boobs and a nice bum. Like that's if I had a six pack and a ripped body, then I would have more than 11 or 10,000 followers on Instagram. That's just a fact.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Does that mean that they've got more influence than I do? I don't know. What does influence even mean? But, I know that I have a job as a journalist and I write that for a full-time job. And the paper that we sell each day online is read by 1 million people or whatever it is. And that each story online is read by X amount of people. But I've got 10,000 followers on Instagram, and then someone who literally just gets their tits out or their six pack.
Yeah.
Imagine all the thirsty comments you get on your posts. You will post a post about something really worthy and really important to you, and you'll get less comments than if you post a shot with you in your Speedos or whatever. Probably.
Oh, it's depressing. And it's like what you're saying. Like, I was talking to someone about this just earlier today, and it's so confusing now, where you're like, what is even a celebrity anymore when you've got these people with 50 million followers on TikTok, like you're saying, for getting their ass out or like doing some weird dance and literally having no talent, and a 16-year-old girl that just by chance or does some weird thing on there ends up buying a house and making all this money and whatever. And then so they've got 50 million, and then you've got like an actual like credible celebrity that's got how do you decipher anymore like what's what? It's confusing.
You made a very clear decision that you were going to go along a certain line, and that line was that you wanted to be respected for your work in this mental health advocacy, real life discussion space. But you could have gone down that path of just showing off your body. And there are posts on your thing, there are posts on your Instagram that you do have your shirt off, but it's fewer and far between, and most of them are about stuff that means something to you. But I guarantee you, I'd like to be wrong, but I guarantee you the ones that you post the thirsty pics are much more likely to get you more followers than the one where you say, I spoke to this person who's a quadriplegic who, is dealing with shit in life.
Totally.
It's really fucking depressing.
I find it incredibly depressing. And I think long term, all of the, if you want to use your body or take short, you could get followers and it might help you in the short term. I don't think any of that stuff sustains. There's always going to be, a new person that's going to do it. So I think, if it's not going to help long term anyway, is the way I try and, cope with all of that crap. But
don't get me wrong. At the same time, I would love to have your body. I would love to have your body.
Well, mate, I don't know if the body. body. I'm 34 years old now, man, and I'm not as ripped as I used to be, but it's not too bad. Um,
I'm
but
just saying, like, I would love to have a six pack and be that dude, but it's just not my path. It's not who I
but
am, and
no, but
whatever.
also like you're saying, it's and like even with this book, like I don't have a huge following on social media. I got like 19,000 on Instagram, but I'm like trying to promote a book, and I believe in this book, and a lot of work's gone into it. I've got really good experts and all that sort of thing, and I've got like my manager, I've got the publishing company, all people saying, Nick, you got to do this, you got to get onto TikTok, you got to blow. I'm like, I sort of tried to do it a bit, and I'm like,
It'll never work if
I,
it's not authentic and you don't
I
feel it.
don't. I feel yuck doing it. I can't sustain every day putting crap on there that I don't believe in. I don't want to. Like, it's
Yeah.
just so. And I do. Like, I find it so depressing. Like what you're saying. It's just like fucking. What has the world come to? But anyway, I don't know.
When I was a boy. Yeah.
Exactly, mate. Oh
Oh,
man.
dude.
Anyway, it is what it is, isn't it?
Yeah. So I don't know. I feel like having conversations around mental health, having been I've been in some pretty dark spaces. I still am on medication. I think it's really important to talk about these things so that it may not mean that like I have the big following on Instagram, but at least it opens up some conversation.
Oh, totally, mate. I think the message is sort of, if you could put crap out to a million people, or you could put something that could actually help someone or potentially save their life in an extreme case, and even if that reaches just one person, that's more beneficial. Like if you can do that. So I think it's a good way to look at it. Quality over quantity, but I was going to ask you. You've talked a lot about mental health. In your past, and I know you're interested in that area, and have a passion as well for trying to help in that area. What's your sort of view on the mental health landscape at the moment, and what sort of stuff do you feel strongly about in that area?
Well, controversially, I think that there's a lot of tokenistic stuff going on mental health, and I think there's a lot of amazing people like yourself that are out there trying to have conversations. But the reality is, the people in power, I don't think, they say all the right things, but I don't actually think that they are doing the right things. Mental health funding is the first thing to get cut. In budgets. It's I think that there's a lot of bullshit and a lot of tokenistic conversations happening, but in reality, I don't believe necessarily that we've come as far as we should. I'm 43. When I was 19 and first tried to commit suicide in Canberra, it was a very different space back then, and we weren't talking about mental health at all. So, we have come a long way, but we haven't come far enough, in my opinion, because we've gotten to that point where everyone, like, it's a fad, it's a buzzword or a buzz thing to admit or to talk about your mental health. But what's the next step? And I'm not saying I know what the next step is, but I certainly think that governments here, abroad, around the world need to actually deliver on the promises a bit more than they actually do.
Thank you so much for supporting Move Your Mind. We're expanding the offerings of the organisation, and we're tailoring everything we do to suit you guys and to try and answer to all of your needs and the questions that you send in. The book is available globally. You can find all of the links at nickbracks.com/book. And we've just released the Move Your Mind community. We've currently got a men's community group, a women's community group, a general group. We're going to be loading up other groups, and you can find all of the links at moveyourmind.me. This group's been created based on the needs of what we've heard and learnt throughout running Move Your Mind. And we have live events, we've got courses, we've got huge amounts of value, the ability to share information, share ideas, work in groups together to grow and share your learnings, to learn about different topics. You get email reminders. There's a whole lot of features in there. We're constantly updating it, and we're so excited to share it with you. You can find all of the information about it at moveyourmind.me. I couldn't agree. No, I couldn't agree with you more, mate. And also, I really appreciate, how open you are about your own, past, and just, how you talk about it in a very normal fashion, which is, again, what we need to do. And we, yes, we are, like you're saying, there's awareness about it. It's becoming a talked about thing, but it's not normalized enough in that sense. It's still stigmatized. And as you're saying, this is a thing that I see all the time in the work I'm doing. I'm talking in companies. I had a meeting, recently with the government, and I'm lobbying for different things. And they say all the right things, and you hear in the media, oh, we've got to do this. Or I go into a company in the corporate, world. Oh, yes, we've got to, mental health is important because that's, they've got to please their shareholders and make sure they tick all these boxes. But there's not that actual care of changing it. And then you really dig deeper, and, things. So on the surface of awareness, great, that's changed. Yeah. But I think the rest of it, there's just such a long way to go. And it is a fad. And then people are, out there saying, I care about mental health because they want to look like it, they want that to look good on their public image, but they're not really doing anything about it. So it's just
we're having those conversations, but once you have those conversations, what happens from that? So
exactly,
it's like we're talking about it, and that's great, and some real changes come of that. For years, if someone said, "Are you okay?" I would say, "Yes, I'm fine, thanks very much." Now, if I'm not okay, I will actually, I won't go out of my way, but I'll say, actually, today's a pretty tough day. I feel pretty teary. I feel pretty shit about myself. But thank you for asking. I'm going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then depending on the person, depending on the situation, that conversation might go elsewhere or may not. But I'm at a point in my life where I want to be real and I want to be honest about that. And if someone asks me if I'm okay, I'm going to tell them the truth, because I think that's part of the next step. Is teaching people to be able to have the conversation beyond acknowledging that someone might not be okay. And,
absolutely.
And what is that next step? Is that next step that I need to have a check-in with my GP? Do I need to have a check-in with my psychologist? Do I need to have some intensive dynamic psychotherapy? At what point? And this, for me, as someone who has a genetic predisposition to various mental health stuff, this for me is I've lost what I was going to say, but this for me is a hugely important part of it, that we acknowledge and we accept, and then we see what the next steps are. Because 9 times out of 10, people will say, I think, or certainly up until the last couple of years, they will say, yeah, I'm fine, thanks. So I think that's a really important thing. And I don't know. I also think, and I'm not referring to you, but I think that there's a lot of cowboys or cowgirls that ride in on the fad of mental health and the buzz of that, and they want to be part of it. But what are they doing? There was one pretty high profile. It became pretty high profile, and I was involved in it. Mental health initiative. I won't refer to it by name, but it came in and they were doing photographs of celebrities, and but there was no what next. So you post a photo of someone and say, here's someone that's dealing with mental health. We need to talk about mental health. And that can be quite triggering to people. But there was no what next. It was all just to put it out there. Well, we all know that people have mental health issues. There's no surprise there. The surprise is in the number of people that would admit that they've got the problem. But there's a lot of people out there that just want to be part of that buzz, but what are they doing next? And I'm not saying that I have the solutions, but I think we really need to sort of drive the conversation that way. I was involved with a mental health organization. I was an ambassador for them, and I hosted an event around military, ex-military people and mental health in that space. And one of the conversations that came out of that forum was that there were, let's say, 50 different organizations competing for funding, attention, all of that. Well, and they were all doing good things individually, but there was no common thing to draw them all together. So they were all sort of competing against each other. And I think that is probably the case across all mental health spaces. And I'm just talking my lived experience. I can't tell you that that's exactly. I'm not an expert. I'm not a psychologist, but I do try and educate myself in some of these things, and that was my observation.
No, totally, mate. And I think, like you said there, you're not an expert or a psychologist. I'm not an expert or a psychologist, but I think, and that is critically important. We need to understand what, how to find the right psychologist, and, if you need medication or what path to go down. But at the same time, we need people like yourself showing, leading, and, you do have a public profile, and you're going and showing vulnerability, and that helps. It's helping me even here. And I try and do the same thing, but it helps in a enormous way. I can never get over how much, it's not doing anything unique. It's just being open and honest. I was in Vancouver recently at a friend's house party, and I was sitting with this group of 6 guys, and they're asking about what I do, and I just got talking, and I was sort of telling them about my history, and then I started asking them, some pretty, just, well, not what I found too, deep questions, but they ended up individually, all of them came up to me after, like, what the hell, Nick, like, you made me feel comfortable, and that, I've never talked to anyone about that, and then they were like on a high about it. I was like, well, it's not that unique what happened there, but just because
I think there's
it's like people find it abnormal that we're like, like what me and you are doing, talking honestly about stuff. Like,
and
what
the
hell?
authenticity of it, we've crossed paths, we've known each other for many years, but we've never really, had that conversation. And I think we've both recognized in each other that we have that commonality. I think there's some trauma that we've probably both experienced, and I think we can feel that energy in each other. But, you're a heterosexual, man who's into fitness and all of that. And sort of, we're kind of polar opposites in my head. But we really have a lot more in common than we think. And there's something beautiful about having that conversation. I don't mean to make assumptions about you, and I want to lump you in as being heterosexual or only a man or whatever. Like, don't mean to judge you or put any
of course,
in any boxes, but from the outside looking in, I think we both look like we come from very different worlds. And the reality is that we're not that dissimilar.
But that's the whole thing. That's the good thing. I couldn't give a crap what, someone's world that they come from is, or whatever it is. It's like, we can all, I think if we all are open, we can, find that way to connect. And there is, like you're saying, there's that common connection where there's so many, if you can be open and honest with each other, you find, oh shit, there's so much in common here. And the other stuff's just, a public profile or whatever it is. So
yeah, I'm interested in, I'm just looking at a photo of yours on your Instagram. I've got it up on my other screen. And I think you're somewhere in the world. So it's Happy Earth Day. You look like you might be in India. You got a young kid jumping on your shoulder. Is that in India?
That is in India. Yep.
And I've been thinking a lot lately about what mental health means in these other worlds. Like, maybe I'm being selfish just sitting here in my privileged, white, middle-class, whatever situation. And there's kids like that in India, and without making assumptions, that are literally just like, how am I going to eat my next meal? And
oh, totally.
I don't know. I'm just thought out there that I don't know what I'm saying. I'm just looking.
Well, I think there's perspective to be gained in it, but like I spent time in India and Africa, and exactly what you're saying is what I experienced. You like go and interact with these people in local villages, and they don't have the luxury of thinking about anything else other than how do I get fresh water and food for my family and stay alive. A lot of them don't even have a bed to sleep in, and you look them in the eye, and they're genuinely present and happy, or a lot of the time. I'm sure they have ups and downs, but you can see that they're actually present. And I don't think it's like something where it's like we're right or they're wrong, but the learning sort of is that I guess in the Western world we have that luxury of opportunity, and there's a million different decisions we could make every day. It's like even what you were talking about earlier. before COVID. I want to fly overseas this weekend. I want to do this. I want to change career. I want to do that. I want to live overseas. I want to actually, no, I want to be famous now. I want to have this career. It's like, well, and that actually leads to, depression and in extreme cases, suicide. People get that overwhelmed from too many options and too many decisions. So it's sort of, I don't think anything's right or wrong. It's sort of all relative, but the learning needs to be, how do we within, this chaotic world that's probably not going to change, it's actually going to get more extreme with where media is going, I guess. How do we personally navigate that and create systems where we can become, self-sustainable as individuals to manage it? That's what we need to do, because I don't think it's, anyone should feel guilty for, suffering when we do have to, because you get billionaires who become suicidal. It's like not their fault, but they haven't been taught techniques of how to deal with this stuff.
Yeah, it's just it's something I think about a lot lately. It'd be lovely to go out, or to have the opportunity to go out and speak to different communities and different people and different things. I'm sure there's different cultures where they believe that mental health is not an issue. Like,
totally.
And it does. It would.
We should start a travel show together, mate. The two of us travel around
and
interview these people.
And go into different communities, going to, speak to the long neck Karen people on the border of Burma and Thailand, and go and speak to some people in Tibet. Like, I've been to Tibet and it's amazing, but what's their view on mental health? But even within Australia, and what does mental health look like in Indigenous communities? And there's, one of the great shames of this nation to me, and my partner talk about it a lot. He's Chinese Australian, was born in China, and I think that what we've done to our Indigenous people in this country is absolutely disgusting, and we don't admit it. We had Sorry Day many, many years ago, but we've never really taken it any further. And most people just say, oh, well, the Indigenous people, they just take money and that's all, they just need to get over it. This is 2021 or whatever. But the reality is we've never truly accepted what we've done. And I'd love to, I just think we need to, as a country, admit our faults and our wrongs so that we can move forward further. And I think a huge part of that is the shame and the fear of admission of what we've done to this country.
Absolutely,
pretty controversial thing to say, but I believe that's what I believe. I'm not maybe articulating myself very well, but imagine. I'd be very curious to hear what Indigenous communities say about mental health.
It would be fascinating. Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot to be learned.
There's 2 countries here in Australia, or more than 2 countries, but the Indigenous Australian country, and then the fact that we don't learn very little language. We're doing welcome to countries now, like they're going out of fashion, and I think that's important, but you've got to take, again, like the mental health conversation, you've got to take it a little bit further. But I'm just waffling on, but I think
it's interesting.
There's a lot we can learn.
Yeah, and they don't have enough of a voice, so there is, there's so much we could learn from that.
Yes, my friend.
So you've talked a lot about your own personal struggles and your ups and downs. Are there, for our listeners, what's worked for you? What are there things that you do that help you cope? What are some things that you've found over the years?
Some of the things find it interesting. Some of the things that I've already mentioned are, being truthful about how I am, and if someone asks, then being honest with them about it, and obviously reading the room. But that is a huge part of, I think, for me, acknowledging when I am good and when I'm not so good. I do little things like when I had my last sort of breakdown, and I wasn't hospitalized and there was no suicide attempts, but when I had my last sort of come apart, that was probably 6 or 7 years ago. And at that point, I took some pretty drastic steps, and I stopped drinking, and I stopped any other recreational drugs, and I stopped looking at any of that sort of stuff. And that for me was a really important step. I think we drink too much, and I don't judge. I think, if I wish I was a person that could just have one drink. But for me, that I feel quite proud and quite comfortable in the fact that I choose not to.
Yep.
Then, so that was a huge step. For me, I turn my phone off when I go to bed. It's a very simple thing. I'd like to do it half an hour before I go to bed, but through COVID, I've been lying in bed watching streaming services in bed before I go to sleep. But in principle, I would love to be able to turn my phone off half an hour before. So literally my phone is on airplane mode and no one can call me between 10 o'clock and 7 o'clock in the morning. That is a huge thing for me because I used to be on all the time, and at midnight, 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, whatever time, I would not just check my Instagram, not just check my Facebook, but I would also check Twitter. I would also check my email. I would always see text messages, WhatsApp, any of that stuff. And it was making me cuckoo. So for me, I'm not saying it works. Other people are fine. They can put their phone in another room. That's fine. I couldn't actually, like, the thought of doing that just freaks me out. Like, I need my phone to be near me, which is pretty sad. But I turn my phone on airplane mode. That's probably one of the biggest things that I do to say, look, this is my time.
Yeah.
And then when I wake up in the middle of the night and it's 3 o'clock and I do a piss and then I go back to bed, I'm like, oh, should I check this? And I'm like, no. This is sleep time.
Yep.
It sounds really simplistic, but that for me is a hugely important part of my routine.
No, I think I love that. And I think it's, that the learning for people as well is it's not about having to, change everything. It's like, how can you make that small change? And I think that's a bigger problem for, with the phone and, not sleeping properly. And I'm finding I'm totally burnt out at the moment because I've been living over here for 7 months. Most of my paid work's in Australia, so I'm like up late every night and I'm checking my phone and doing, so I don't sleep properly anymore. And I'm like, I actually have to change it now because it's really affecting me. It's affecting my mental health. My sleep's broken. My brain's, not knowing how to process things properly. And I think it's so important that we, have to have boundaries with ourselves about these things.
I'm one of those people that needs 8 hours sleep. And if I don't get 8 hours sleep, I'm absolutely cactus. Dead. My boyfriend often jokes, like, I go to bed like early and then I lie in bed and I look at my phone or I watch a streaming service or whatever. So I go to sleep around 10:30, 11 on average. But he thinks that's very funny because it's so early. But I have to have that sleep. Like, and I am always going, right, so if I've got to be, my thought process is, if I've got to be up at 7 or if I've got to be up at 8, what time do I need to go to bed? Because if I can get 10 hours sleep, fuck yeah, I'm down for that. So, and then I'm counting the factor that I'll probably have a bit of anxiety in my night. I'll probably wake up. I might wake up at 6 and not be able to get back to sleep. So if I go to bed at 10, then that factors in that there might be a little bit of extra time. Because that's just part of me. So I do those things and all the other sort of normal things that probably people do that are pretty simple. But I have my dogs. I have 4 dogs between my boyfriend and I. We've got 4. And I go walking every morning. I try and do basic fitness. I'm not a fitness dude, but I do see a trainer a couple of times a week, and I just do really basic things like that. I do a bit of yoga. I was diagnosed with arthritis everywhere about a year ago, and that has put a spanner in the works of that. So I can't do as much yoga as I used to like. But yoga, yin yoga for me, getting a massage once a week, which sounds a bit extravagant, but for me, for my body and stuff like that, that is a huge part of switching off. My phone again goes on airplane mode. If I can have a 2-hour massage or 90-minute massage, great. It's me time. So those sorts of things are things that I do.
It's a 10-year anniversary of Bracks, and we've relaunched with the classic white pair. We've also got new styles coming out super soon. We're donating $1 from every pair to mental health, currently to 1 in 5. You can find all of this at www.underbracks.com. It's important. Yeah. No, thank you for sharing all of that, mate. And I think, it is like the takeaway from that for everyone listening as well is it's just so important to have that time to yourself. You have to. You have to. Everyone has to have some of that time to themselves, where no one's superhuman. We all need to take that time out, and otherwise we burn out. It's like,
whether that's a guilty pleasure of watching Real Housewives and putting your phone in the other room or whatever,
it doesn't matter.
Just whatever that is for you, then try and find it, because I think it's really important.
Absolutely.
Personally.
No, I couldn't agree more, mate. So we finish every episode with 5 sort of closing questions. These are just quick answers, whatever sort of comes to mind.
Yes, it's the answer. Whatever you say, yes.
Just say yes to it all there.
Yeah.
And before that, for anyone listening, if they want to look you up or find more about you or your work, where should we send them?
My Instagram is J.Mo Confidential, J-M-O, not J-Mo, J-A-M-O. It's J-M-O Confidential. Jonathon Moran, M-O-R-A-N on Facebook. Twitter, I'm on there occasionally, although I find that's where I mostly get death threats and hate, so I sort of stay off Twitter mostly.
Stay away from that, yeah.
But yeah, just, I'm around, pretty easy to find. I'm sure you can find my phone number, email. I get all
whatever you need. And I'll put your Instagram and these handles in the show notes for anyone listening that wants to learn more. But these closing questions, the first one is, what is the best childhood memory that comes to mind?
My mum and my sister and I being a little unit, and that was nice. Really important. My twin sister and my mum, and yeah, we were. There's not a specific thing, but I just feel that comfort of the three of us.
I love that. That's nice. What do you think is the biggest burden on mental health in society at the moment?
Oh gosh,
or one of the biggest. One of the biggest. One of the biggest.
Lack of funding, and then probably the competing interests, the two different things. But as I said before, and that can be as simple as grassroots stuff or bigger stuff. But there's a lot of great stuff going on, but they're all sort of competing against each other. And then again, the tokenistic language that's used around mental health, but is the money actually going there?
Yeah, totally. We could do a podcast on just that topic. I think there's so much to talk about with that. Do you see things improving?
Yeah.
I guess, there's more awareness, but yeah, in general, you see it improving?
Yeah. About 6 years ago, when I did have that last sort of breakdown and last sort of fall apart, I didn't want to live. I was alive for my family. And I did some pretty drastic things, changed my medication, had some psychodynamic therapy, blah, 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 blah. And from that, through all of those processes, which took time, I learned to not just appreciate, I want to be alive.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be alive. So yes, I do have hope. I do have joy and love and hope, and things will improve for sure. Because these conversations are happening for sure. Yeah, I think things get better, and things get worse again. And another fucking coronavirus strain might come, like Moo, that's traveling around all the different countries, and she's immune to the vaccine and shit. And then we'll be locked down again. But are we heading in the right direction? Yes, we are.
Yeah, totally. What would you say is your personal definition of happiness?
My partner and my family. And my family is my twin sister and her 4 daughters and her husband, and then my extended family, but my mum isn't alive anymore. So my partner Alex is happiness to me, and our life that we're building together, and then my sister and the kids.
Beautiful. Final one here, mate.
Is that the right answer?
I love that answer. I think, I think it's a beautiful answer. I like it. I also like expensive things. I like Louis Vuitton. I like Gucci. So, happiness for me is those 5 minutes where I'm opening something rich. But yeah, in general, all that shit is just noise. Family is the real deal. Yeah. And it's nice to have extremes in life. I feel like I'm like that. I've got this very deep side, but then I also can have other extremes as well. But anyway, that's life. So final one, what would you say is the most courageous thing you've ever done?
Oh God, that's a tough.
Or one of them.
I'm not very good at singing my own praises because for most of my life I've thought I'm a piece of shit. But
I think you've done incredible stuff, mate.
yeah, I'm just talking about in
You've done a
reality,
lot, yeah.
in my head, I think probably the most important, courageous thing that I've done is this: having these conversations, being open about my mental health battle, because it comes at a cost. And that cost is that people discount you often. And they think, and while all the right things are being said, they still see you as less than or weaker than. So I feel that if I have the strength to speak up about my mental health issues, then that's putting it on the table. And I think that's courageous, if I'm honest. Speaking similarly, and we didn't touch on it in this podcast, but and it fits in the same tone, is I was sexually abused for many years as a kid, and that all sort of ties into my sense of self-worth and all of that. And so I've been quite vocal about that. And over recent years, I've found more strength to talk about that stuff, again, because I feel that even if one person feels less alone through me finding that strength, then I am heading in the right direction. And the truth is, it comes at a great cost, because after having these conversations, you can feel very depleted. So I think that's very courageous of me. And I think fighting the good fight, trying to do the right thing, speaking up for marriage equality, all of those things are things that I feel are courageous in a world that shuts down voices like mine, or the more extreme voices are louder and they get more attention. But I just try and do the right thing, and I think I try. There's a lot of people out there that probably think I'm a fucking asshole, but I try and do the right thing.
Which is all we can do. Yeah, it's all we can do.
And if I'm honest with you, Nick, there's a lot of pain, and I'm still working through it. But like I said, if I've got that strength today, then I'll share it with you in the hope that it helps someone else.
I think well, look, thank you so much for coming on and being so open and sharing all of that. And I think, the most courageous thing you can do is, be vulnerable like that. And there's so much strength in that. And I don't think anyone's ever going to, have all the answers. We're all growing and learning forever. There's no end. But the fact you can, talk openly about that, you're setting an example for so many people. So
the way I see it, Nick, is that no one can hurt me more than my head has already hurt myself. The amount of hate that I level at myself inside, that I'm ugly, that I'm this, that I'm dumb, that I'm that. And I know logically that it's not right and that it's not true, but no one can hurt me anymore. So fuck it. I'm going to be honest. It's my truth. It's my story. I'm going to own it. And I'm not saying it's the only truth. It's just my truth. And
I love that.
There might be holes in it. There might be things that are wrong with it. But it's my truth. And again, if I can, I feel a bit arrogant saying it, but if I am able to help one person, maybe two, maybe three, by feeling less alone and connected in any way, shape or form with their story maybe being similar to mine, then hopefully that does some good in the world, because what else are we here for? We're not here for a long time.
I think it'll 100% do good in the world. And like you're saying, it's like I've got the same thing where I'm like constantly working against myself, and you're beating yourself up in your head, and you're like, well, no one else can really do hurt you more than that. So it's like I think it's such a good point what you said there, and love everything you've talked about, mate. So thank you for making the time. I really appreciate it. I wish we could catch up more often. So this has been really nice to have this time with you as well.
And we'll catch up.
We'll have to.
There's always a spare room at my place if you want to crash on the couch or in the spare room, and keep it up. And if you need any support, any help, just let me know.
Appreciate it, mate. Thank you so much.
I look like I literally look like shit. My hair is like a bob. I'm fucking terribly embarrassed, but I'm kind of owning it as well. I've started wearing Crocs. Like that's my life.
Oh well, there you go. This is COVID life, mate. You got to make do.
All right, Ledge.
Well, thanks again.
Stay
awesome,
safe.
Mate. Thank you so much.
Thanks to Jonathon Moran for joining me today for Move Your Mind.
If you'd like to learn more, you can go to moveyourmind.me, or you can check out the Move Your Mind book at nickbracks.com/book.